The silence in the mahogany-paneled conference room was heavy, but it wasn't heavy with grief. It was heavy with greed. I sat at the head of the long table, my hands folded calmly over the cane I didn't actually need, watching the two people I had birthed and raised. To my left sat Greg. He was 32 now, wearing a suit that cost more than my first car. He wasn't looking at me. He was looking at his watch, a Rolex Submariner, tapping his foot in a rhythm that screamed impatience. Every 30 seconds, he would let out a sharp exhale, checking the door, waiting for my lawyer to walk back in. To my right was Sarah. She was scrolling through her phone, her acrylic nails clicking aggressively against the screen. I could see the reflection of Instagram on her glasses. She was likely posting a selfie with the location tagged Henderson and Associates law firm, fishing for sympathy or perhaps signaling to her friends that payday was coming. Neither of them had asked how I was feeling. Not when they walked in, not when we sat down, and certainly not during the awkward 10-minute wait we had been enduring. "Can we speed this up?" Greg finally snapped. Though he didn't look at me, he addressed the empty chair at the other end of the table. "I have a flight to Cabo at 6. If we miss the check-in window because Henderson is making coffee, I'm going to lose my deposit." "Relax, Greg," Sarah mumbled, not looking up. "The old man is just printing the checks. You know how slow these boomers are." She paused, then finally turned her head toward me, flashing a smile that didn't reach her eyes. It was a terrifyingly practiced expression. "Mom, you okay? You need water or something? You look tired." I looked at her. I really looked at her. I tried to find the 6-year-old girl who used to cry when I left for work, the teenager who swore she'd never leave my side. But all I saw was a stranger waiting for a transaction to clear. "I'm fine, Sarah," I said softly. My voice was steady, which seemed to surprise them. They were expecting the frail, confused woman I had pretended to be on the phone last week to lure them here. "I'm just thinking about the last time we were all in a room together." Greg scoffed. "Christmas, 4 years ago. We know, Mom. You bring it up every time we talk. Can we not do the guilt trip today? We're here to help you manage your estate."
"You called us, remember?" "Right," Sarah chimed in, her tone dripping with condescending sweetness. "We're doing this for you. You can't handle the property taxes and the maintenance anymore. It's better if we liquidate it now, put the money in a trust we manage, and get you into that nice facility Greg found. It has a garden." A facility. That was their plan. Sell my home, take the $2 million in assets I had accumulated over 40 years of grinding as a single mother, and stick me in a state-funded home while they managed the trust. The heavy oak door finally creaked open. Mr. Henderson walked in. He was a tall man with a face made of stone, carrying a single, thick leather portfolio. The atmosphere in the room shifted instantly. Greg stopped tapping his foot. Sarah put her phone face down. They sat up straighter, like vultures spotting a carcass in the desert. Their eyes were glued to that contained deeds, bank transfer authorizations, and power of attorney forms. They had no idea that what was inside that folder would shatter their world. Mr. Henderson sat down, adjusted his glasses, and looked at me. I gave him a barely perceptible nod. "Let's begin," Mr. Henderson said. Greg rubbed his hands together. Finally. I took a deep breath. The game was on. They thought they were the hunters, but they didn't realize they had just walked willingly into the trap.
Mr. Henderson opened the leather portfolio with agonizing slowness. He smoothed out the papers, adjusted his reading glasses, and then simply stared at the document on top for a long, silent moment. Greg shifted in his seat, the leather creaking loudly in the quiet room. "Before we proceed to the transfer of assets," Mr. Henderson said, his voice dry and devoid of emotion, "I am required by state law to review the current valuation of the estate to ensure all parties understand the magnitude of what is being signed over today." Greg's eyes widened. "Valuation? We already know the house is worth 1.5. The savings are another 800,000. Can't we just skip to the signatures?" "Actually," Mr. Henderson interrupted, looking over the rim of his glasses, "the real estate market in your mother's neighborhood has surged significantly in the last 6 months. Coupled with the reassessment of your late father's vintage watch collection and the compounding interest on the investment accounts, the total liquidable value of the estate sits at $3.2 million. The room went dead silent.
I saw Sarah's jaw physically drop. She looked at Greg, and for a split second, they weren't brother and sister. They were conspirators who had just hit the lottery. The boredom vanished from Sarah's face, replaced by a hungry, predatory intensity. She reached out and squeezed my hand. Her palm was sweaty. "Oh, Mom," she cooed, her voice trembling with excitement. "$3 million? You've been sitting on that all this time? You must have been so stressed managing that alone. It's a good thing we're here now. We can protect it. We can protect you." I looked down at her hand covering mine. It was a perfect manicure, painted a soft baby pink. It was the same hand that had pressed the decline button on my calls for the last 5 years. "Yes," I said, keeping my voice level. "It is a lot of money. Enough to change a life." "Exactly," Greg said, leaning forward, practically vibrating. "And look, Mom, we've been talking. Once we get this trust set up, we're going to get you the deluxe suite at Silver Pines. It's not just a facility, it's like a resort. Heated floors, gourmet meals. You won't have to lift a finger. You deserve to rest." Rest. That was their code word for die quietly. I pulled my hand away from Sarah's grasp, pretending to reach for my water glass.
"It's funny," I mused, looking at the condensation dripping down the glass. "I remember calling you, Greg, 2 years ago. I needed $500 to fix the furnace when it broke in the middle of January. I was freezing. Do you remember what you told me?" Greg blinked, caught off guard. The dollar signs in his eyes flickered for a second. I think I was in between jobs then, Mom. You know how the market is." "You were in Aspen," I corrected him gently. "I saw the photos. You were skiing. You told me, 'Mom, you need to learn to budget better,' and then you stopped answering my texts for 3 months." The room temperature seemed to drop 10 degrees. Sarah let out a nervous, high-pitched laugh. "Oh, Mom, don't be silly. Greg was just stressed. We were all building our careers. We were working so hard so that we could be here for you now." "Right," Greg said, recovering his confidence. "The past is the past. We're here now, aren't we? We drove 4 hours to be here today. That has to count for something." "It counts for everything," I said, a small, sad smile playing on my lips. "It really does." Mr. Henderson cleared his throat again, drawing their attention back to the papers. "If we are ready," the lawyer said, "I have the first document for review. This is the living trust agreement." He slid a thick stack of papers across the mahogany table toward them. Greg grabbed it before it even stopped moving. He flipped to the back page immediately, looking for the signature line, uncapping his expensive fountain pen. "Wait," I said sharply. Greg froze, the pen hovering inches from the paper. "What? What is it?" "I have one condition before you sign," I said, a small one. "I want to hear about your lives. I want to know what you've been doing for the last 5 years. Since you're going to be managing my money, I need to know you're responsible." Sarah rolled her eyes, masking it quickly as a sigh. "Mom, really? Now? We can catch up at dinner. Let's just get the legal stuff done." "No," I said, leaning back in my chair. "Humor an old woman. Tell me about your success. I want to hear why you were too busy to call your mother."
Greg capped his pen with an irritated click, but he forced a tight smile. He glanced at the clock again. The Cabo flight was clearly still on his mind, but the allure of a $3.2 million pot of gold was enough to make him play along. "Fine," Greg said, leaning back and crossing his arms. "You want to know what I've been doing? I've been building an empire, Mom. I'm a senior vice president of sales now. I manage a team of 50 people. I close deals in my sleep that are worth more than your house." He puffed out his chest, the arrogance radiating off him like heat. "That's why I couldn't always pick up the phone. When you're operating at my level, you can't just stop for a chat about, I don't know, your garden or the neighbor's cat. Time is money, literally. My hourly rate is $400. So yeah, Aspen wasn't just a vacation, it was networking. That's how the world works." I nodded slowly. "So when I was in the hospital last year for my gallbladder surgery, you didn't visit because it wasn't profitable?" Greg flinched, his face reddening slightly. "It wasn't that I didn't want to come. I had a quarterly review that week. If I missed it, I would have lost my bonus. You had, what's her name, that girl, Alina? You had her." "Alina," I repeated. "Yes, my tenant." "Exactly," Sarah jumped in, eager to turn the spotlight on herself.
And honestly, Mom, we knew you were in good hands. I was launching my boutique marketing agency then. Do you have any idea how hard it is to get influencers to commit to a brand launch? I was working 18-hour days. I was literally sleeping under my desk. She pulled out her phone and started swiping aggressively. Look at this. This campaign I ran for a skincare line, it got 2 million impressions. 2 million. I'm an influencer in my own right now. People look up to me. I have a brand to maintain. I can't just drop everything and drive 4 hours every time you feel lonely. It's not realistic. She turned the phone toward me. It was a photo of her holding a champagne glass on a yacht, captioned #hustlehard, #selfmade. The date on the post was May 14th. May 14th, I whispered. That was my birthday. Sarah pulled the phone back quickly. Well, yeah, it was a work event. I was celebrating, success for the family. Everything we do is for the family legacy, right? Legacy, I echoed.
Is that what this is about? Of course. Greg slammed his hand on the table, trying to regain control of the narrative. We're successful because you raised us to be driven. You should be proud. We ignored the small stuff so we could focus on the big picture. And now the big picture is here. We have the skills to take your assets and triple them. If you leave it in a savings account, inflation will eat it alive. We're doing you a favor, Mom. We're saving you from yourself. He reached for the pen again. So are we done with the history lesson? You see that we're capable. We're not kids anymore. We're business people. Let's do business. I looked at them. Really looked at them. They weren't lying about their jobs. They were successful. They were sharp. They were capable. But they were also completely hollow. They viewed me not as a mother, but as a liability to be managed, an asset to be stripped. They had just admitted, to my face, that their silence wasn't an accident. It was a calculation. I hadn't been forgotten. I had been deprioritized. You're right, I said, my voice hardening just a fraction. You are business people, and you've been very clear about your priorities. I turned to Mr. Henderson. Show them the trust agreement. Greg grinned, uncurling the cap of his pen once more. Finally, just point me to the dotted line. Mr. Henderson didn't slide the papers to them this time. Instead, he opened the folder and took out a single crisp sheet of paper. He placed it in the center of the table. It wasn't a contract, it was a photograph. It was a picture of me sitting alone at a small table in a diner, staring at a birthday cake with one candle. The chair opposite me was empty. Greg frowned, looking at the photo and then at me. What is this? Some kind of joke? No joke, I said. That was taken 3 years ago, on my 60th birthday. I waited 2 hours. You both said you were coming. Then 10 minutes before, you both texted to cancel. So Sarah snapped, her patience fraying. Why are we looking at this now? Because, I said, signaling Mr. Henderson with a nod. Before we discuss where the money goes, we need to discuss the debt. Debt? Greg's head snapped up. You said the house was paid off. What debt? Not financial debt, I said calmly. Emotional debt. And unlike a mortgage, the interest on this one has been compounding for a very long time. Emotional debt? Greg laughed, a short, harsh bark of a sound. Okay, now I know you're losing it. Is this some kind of therapy session? Look, I'll pay for a therapist if that's what you want. Hell, I'll pay for the best shrink in the city. Just sign the papers so we can secure the funds. He reached for the document stack again, trying to bypass the photograph on the table, but Mr. Henderson placed a heavy hand over the papers, pinning them down. Mr. Henderson, Greg warned, his voice low, remove your hand. I cannot do that, sir, the lawyer replied evenly. Not until the terms of the emotional audit are satisfied. It is a prerequisite clause in the living will. A what? Sarah shrieked. An emotional audit? That's not a legal term. You're making this up. It is a binding stipulation your mother added, Mr. Henderson explained. To prove you are worthy beneficiaries, you must pass a simple test of recollection. I leaned forward, clasping my hands. It's very simple. Since you both claim you were too busy working and building your empires to call me, you surely remember the details of the few times we did speak, right? Because they were so rare, they must have been memorable. Greg slumped back in his chair, rolling his eyes. Fine, quiz us. Let's get this over with. What is this? What is your favorite color type stuff?
Question 1, I said, ignoring his sarcasm. 3 years ago, on Thanksgiving, you didn't come home. You said you were working, but we spoke on the phone for 5 minutes. Do you remember what I told you during that call? It was very specific news. Greg stared at me blankly. He looked at the ceiling, then at Sarah. Sarah shrugged, looking equally lost. Greg stammered. You said the turkey was good? That you missed us? I told you I had been diagnosed with early-stage glaucoma, I said quietly. Silence. I told you I was scared I might lose my driver's license. I told you I might need help getting to appointments. I paused. You said, that sucks, Mom. Gotta run. My Uber is here. Greg's face went pale. I don't remember that. The connection was probably bad. Sarah, I turned to her. Last Mother's Day, you sent a card. It arrived 3 days late, but it was nice. We texted. Do you remember what I asked you for? The one thing I wanted for Mother's Day? Sarah bit her lip. Her eyes darted around the room, as if the answer was written on the walls. A spa day? Money?
Did you want money? I asked for a framed photo of us, I said. Just a picture of the 3 of us together, from when you were kids. I told you I had lost my copy in the basement flood. I just wanted to see our faces together again. Sarah looked down at her hands. I meant to send it. I got busy with the influencers and... You never sent it, I finished. But you did post a throwback picture of us on Instagram that day, with the caption, My Rock, the woman who made me who I am. Love you, Mom. It got 4,000 likes. I was honoring you, Sarah protested, her voice rising in defense. That's how people show love nowadays, publicly. But you didn't send it to me, I said. You showed the world you loved me, but you didn't show me. You performed love, Sarah. You didn't practice it. This is ridiculous, Greg stood up, knocking his chat back. So we forgot some details. We're busy people. Do you think we remember every little conversation? We're not computers. This is unfair. You're holding money hostage over feelings. Yes, I said, my voice rising for the first time, sharp and commanding. I am. Because that money represents my life's work, my blood, sweat, and tears. And I will not hand it over to people who cannot even remember the sound of my voice when I was in pain. Sit down, Greg, Mr. Henderson said, his voice like a gavel strike. We are not done. Greg glared at the lawyer, then at me. He looked like he wanted to scream, to flip the table. But the thought of $3 million kept him tethered. He slowly pulled his chair back up and sat down, seething. What's next? He hissed. What other failures do you want to rub in our faces? No more questions, I said, signaling Mr. Henderson again. Now, we look at the evidence. Mr. Henderson reached into his briefcase and pulled out not a paper, but a tablet. He set it up on the table, facing them. I call this next exhibit, I said, the reality versus the excuse.
Mr. Henderson tapped the screen of the tablet. A split-screen video appeared. On the left side was a simple digital calendar log from my phone provider. On the right side were screenshots from Greg and Sarah's social media accounts, Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn. Let's look at December 24th, 2 years ago, Mr. Henderson narrated. On the left screen, an entry highlighted in red appeared. Outgoing call to Greg. Duration, 00. Sent to voicemail. Below it, a text message from Greg. Hey Mom, swamped at the office, wrapping up end-of-year reports. Can't talk. Merry Christmas. Seems reasonable, Greg muttered, crossing his arms. End of year's crunch time. Now the right side, Mr. Henderson continued. A photo popped up. It was from a friend's Instagram account that Greg was tagged in. It showed Greg wearing a Santa hat, holding a beer bong, shirtless, at a pool party. The location tag read Cancun, Mexico. The timestamp was exactly 10 minutes after he sent the text about being swamped at the office. Greg's face turned a shade of red I hadn't seen since he was caught stealing cookies at age 5. He opened his mouth to speak, but no sound came out. Swamped, I repeated dryly. The water did look quite deep. Okay, that was a corporate retreat, Greg stammered, desperate. It was mandatory team building. We were working on morale. Next entry, Mr. Henderson said, ignoring him. June 12th, Sarah's birthday. Left screen. Incoming call from Mom to Sarah. Duration, 024. Audio played from the tablet.
My voice singing happy birthday slightly off key filled the room. Then Sarah's voice cutting me off abruptly. Mom, stop. I'm in a meeting with a huge client. I can't do this right now. I'll call you back. Click. Right screen, a TikTok video posted by Sarah at that exact same time. She was in a dressing room trying on outfits, laughing with a sales assistant. She was talking to the camera. Guys, literally spending my birthday treating myself because I deserve it. No drama today, just vibes. Sarah shrank into her chair. I was vlogging. That is work, Mom. Content creation is work. You told me you were in a meeting, I said. You cut off your mother singing happy birthday to you so you could talk to your phone screen. It's about branding, Sarah cried out, tears of frustration, not remorse, welling up. You don't understand. If I don't post, the algorithm buries me. I have to be on all the time.
I didn't want to hurt your feelings, so I said I was in a meeting. It was a white lie. A lie is a lie, I said, and there are hundreds of them here. Mr. Henderson scrolled, the screen blurred with entries. Sick in bed versus checking in at a 5-star restaurant. Car broke down versus photo of a new BMW. Phone died versus live streaming for an hour. It was a barrage of deceit, a documented history of their avoidance. The air in the room felt brittle, like it would shatter if anyone spoke too loudly. Greg and Sarah were slumped in their chairs, the bravado from earlier completely drained away. The digital evidence on the tablet screen had done more damage than any shouting match could have. Mr. Henderson closed the tablet with a definitive snap and pushed it aside. He reached into the leather portfolio one last time. He pulled out 2 thick documents bound in blue legal covers. He placed one in front of Greg and one in front of Sarah. The last will and testament of Martha J. Reynolds, Mr. Henderson announced. Or rather, the living trust distribution schedule, effective immediately upon signature. Greg's hand twitched toward the document. Hope, desperate and pathetic, flickered in his eyes. Despite everything, the guilt, the shame, the exposure, the greed was still there. It was a reflex. Is this it? Greg asked, his voice hoarse. Are we getting another chance? Read it, I said, sitting back down. Read item 1, paragraph A. Sarah opened hers first, her hands shaking so much the paper rustled loudly. She scanned the page, her eyes darting back and forth. Then she stopped. Her breath hitched. What? She whispered. What is this? Greg flipped his open. He read the same paragraph. His face went from pale to a deep, angry purple in seconds. The Alina Santos Care Fund? Greg read aloud, spitting the words out like poison. Who the hell is Alina Santos? You know who she is, I said calmly. She's the tenant. The one who broke the window to save me. The one who visited me every day in the hospital while you were networking in Aspen. You're giving her everything? She shrieked, looking up at me with horror. Mom! She's a stranger. She's just some girl who rents a room. We are your children. Read the amount, Sarah, I commanded. 100% of the primary residence located at 42 Maple Drive. Sarah read, her voice trembling. And 50% of the liquid assets. That's half the cash. Greg slammed his fist on the table. That's $1.6 million. To a tenant? Mom, she manipulated you. She saw a lonely old woman and she played you. This is undue influence. We can contest this. She didn't manipulate me, I said. She was simply there. She made me soup when I had the flu. She fixed the leaking faucet you promised to fix for 6 months.
She sat with me and watched old movies because she knew I missed my husband. She didn't ask for a dime. In fact, she tried to pay me extra rent when she got a promotion. I refused it. So you're buying her love, Greg sneered. That's what this is? No, I corrected him. I'm paying back a debt. She invested time, care, and love in me. You invested nothing. This is the return on investment, Greg. You're a businessman. You understand ROI, don't you? But the house, Sarah cried. That's our childhood home. I grew up there. You can't just give it away. You haven't visited that home in 4 years, Sarah, I reminded her. Elena planted the roses in the front yard. Elena painted the porch. It's more her home now than it ever was yours. This is insane. Greg stood up and began pacing the small room. Mr. Henderson, this can't be legal. She's clearly not in her right mind. We need a competency hearing. I assure you, Mr. Reynolds, Henderson said, his voice cold steel. Your mother is of sound mind. We have video documentation of her signing this, witnessed by 2 independent psychiatrists. If you try to contest this in court, you will lose, and the legal fees will come out of, well, you'll see. Wait, Sarah said, wiping her eyes and looking closer at the document. You said Elena gets 50% of the cash. What about the other 50%? That's still 1.6 million left. She looked at me, a glimmer of hope returning. Does that go to us? Is that our lesson? We only get half? I smiled. It wasn't a warm smile. Read item 2, I said. Greg stopped pacing. He grabbed a document again. Item 2, the remaining assets. He trailed off. He squinted at the paper, as if the words were written in a foreign language. No, he whispered. No, no, no. What is it? Sarah asked, leaning over. Tell them, Mr. Henderson, I said. The remaining 50%, the lawyer stated, has been placed into a charitable trust. Charity? Sarah gasped. Specifically, Mr. Henderson continued, the Greg and Sarah Reynolds Foundation for Abandoned Elderly Parents. Greg looked like he was going to be sick. The funds, Mr. Henderson read from the document, will be used to pay for companionship services, medical transport, and emergency care for elderly individuals whose families are unavailable. The donation has already been made in your names. In our names? Sarah screeched.
So we don't get the money? We get the credit? Precisely, I said. Think of the tax write-off, Greg. It's huge. And think of the PR, Sarah. You'll be heroes on Instagram, philanthropists. Isn't that what you wanted? To look good to the world? Greg was sputtering, his face contorted with rage. You gave our inheritance to a charity named after us? To mock us? To teach you, I said. Since you didn't have time to care for me, your money will pay for people who do have the time to care for others like me. This is a joke. Greg threw the papers on the floor. I'm not signing this. I'm not accepting this. You don't have to sign anything, Mr. Henderson said calmly. The trust is already active. This meeting was simply a courtesy notification. Courtesy? Greg laughed maniacally. You call this courtesy? You ruined us. I didn't ruin you, I said, standing up fully now. You have your careers, you have your condos, you have your empires. You don't need my money. I reached into my purse. However, I said, I didn't want you to leave empty-handed. I pulled out 2 small white envelopes. There is item 3, I said. The personal bequests. Greg and Sarah froze. They looked at the envelopes in my hand. After everything, the shock, the anger, the loss, human greed was a powerful thing. They couldn't help themselves. What's in there? Sarah asked, her voice small. Take them, I said, sliding the envelopes across the mahogany table. They hesitated, then reached out. Greg tore his open first. Sarah followed. They reached inside and pulled out the contents. It wasn't a check. It wasn't a deed. It was a plastic card. A gift card? Greg stared at it. For AT&T? $50, I said, prepaid. What? Sarah looked at hers. A phone card? Use it, I said, my voice firm. Use it to call me. Not when you want money, not when you need a favor, just to call me. Or, if you can't manage that, save it. Save it for your own children. Because one day, they're going to grow up. They're going to watch how you treated me, and they're going to learn. I looked them dead in the eye. Call your children, Greg, Sarah, before they decide you're not worth the airtime. I turned to Mr. Henderson. I'm ready to go. Alina is waiting for me in the lobby. We're going to get ice cream. I turned my back on them. I walked toward the door. Behind me, I heard the sound of a plastic card snapping in half.
But I didn't look back. I had a daughter to meet. She just happened to be the one I didn't give birth to.
I walked out of the conference room, and the heavy oak door clicked shut behind me, muffling the sounds of Greg's incoherent shouting.
The silence of the hallway was instant and blissful. I took a deep breath, filling my lungs with air that felt cleaner, lighter. Waiting in the reception area, sitting on the edge of a beige sofa, was Elena. She looked up at me. She was wearing her nurse's scrubs, dark blue, with a worn cardigan thrown over her shoulders. She looked tired. She had just come off a 12-hour shift, but her eyes brightened immediately. She stood up, not looking at the expensive mahogany surroundings or the stern receptionist, but only at me. "Martha," she said, rushing over. She didn't ask, "How much did you get?" or "Did they sign?" She gently took my arm. "Are you okay? You look pale. Did you take your blood pressure medication this morning?" The contrast was so sharp it almost physically hurt. Inside that room were my own flesh and blood, furious that they weren't millionaires. Out here was a girl who owed me nothing, worrying about my blood pressure. "I'm fine, honey," I said, patting her hand. I took it. "I'm just relieved. It's done." Elena looked at the closed door behind me, then back at my face. She knew what I had planned, though she had tried to talk me out of giving her so much. "I don't need it, Martha. Just give it to them so they don't hate you," she had said. That was Elena. "Did they take it well?" she asked tentatively. I let out a dry chuckle. About as well as a cat takes a bath, but they needed to hear it. Just then, the conference room door burst open. Greg stormed out, his face a mask of fury. Sarah followed close behind, her mascara running, clutching her designer handbag like a shield. They stopped dead when they saw us. Greg's eyes locked onto Elena. The hatred in his gaze was palpable. He marched right up to her, invading her personal space. Elena took a step back, startled, her hand tightening on my arm. "You," Greg spat, pointing a finger in her face. "You think you're smart, don't you? Manipulating a senile old woman?" "Greg, stop," I warned, stepping in front of Elena. "No," Greg shouted, causing the receptionist to pick up the phone, likely to call security. "I want her to hear this. You are a thief. You are a gold digger. You think that money is yours? I'm going to sue you until you're living in a cardboard box. I will drag you through court for years. You won't see a dime." Elena looked at him, confused and frightened, but she stood her ground. I didn't ask for anything, Greg. I told Martha." "Save it," Sarah hissed, stepping up beside her brother. "We know your type, playing the nice nurse act. It's pathetic. You stole our house, our childhood home." "Your childhood home?" Elena's voice was quiet but steady. "When was the last time you were there, Sarah?" Sarah scoffed. "That's none of your business." "I was there when the basement flooded last year," Elena said, her voice gaining strength. "I was there hauling wet boxes of your old yearbooks and toys up the stairs because Martha couldn't lift them. I dried them out. I repacked them. I saved your memories, Sarah, because your mother was crying that they would be ruined." Sarah blinked, taken aback. "And Greg," Elena turned to him, "I was there when the roof leaked in your old bedroom. I held the bucket. I found the contractor. I drove Martha to the bank to get the money to pay him because you wouldn't answer her calls for a loan." "So you did some chores," Greg sneered. "That makes you worth millions?" "No," Elena said softly. "It just makes me a daughter, even if I wasn't born one." Greg opened his mouth to retort, but no words came. The truth hung in the air, heavy and undeniable. "Mr. Reynolds," a deep voice boomed. We all turned. A large security guard was standing by the elevators, arms crossed. Mr. Henderson stood behind him, looking unimpressed. "I think it's time for you to leave," Mr. Henderson said, "unless you want to add trespassing to your list of problems today." Greg glared at Henderson, then at me, and finally at Elena. He adjusted his suit jacket, trying to regain some shred of dignity. "This isn't over," he muttered. "You'll be hearing from my lawyer." "I look forward to it," Mr. Henderson said dryly. "He knows my number." Greg spun around and marched toward the elevators. Sarah lingered for a second. She looked at me, her expression a mix of anger and something that looked like regret. But then she looked at her phone, which had just buzzed in her hand. The moment broke. She turned and hurried after her brother. The elevator doors slid shut, swallowing them and their entitlement. The silence returned to the lobby. I let out a breath I didn't know I was holding. My legs felt suddenly weak.
I swayed slightly, and Elena was there instantly, her arm around my waist, supporting me. "I've got you," she whispered. "I've got you, Martha." "I know," I said, leaning my head on her shoulder. "I know you do." "Come on," Elena said, guiding me toward the exit. "Let's get out of here. You promised me ice cream, and I think there's a new flavor at the shop down the street." "Salted caramel?" I asked, a small smile returning. "Better," she grinned. "Justice Berry." We walked out of the building into the bright afternoon sun. The air was warm. The city noise was loud. But for the first time in years, I didn't feel lonely. I had lost 2 children that day, it was true, but I had finally accepted the one I had found. And as we walked down the street, my phone didn't ring, and I was perfectly fine with that.
The interior of the black Uber SUV smelled of fake pine air freshener and rising panic. Greg sat on the left, loosening his silk tie until it hung like a noose around his neck. Sarah sat on the right, her thumbs flying across her phone screen, her face illuminated by the cold blue light of the display. Greg wasn't looking at his watch anymore. He was staring out the tinted window at the passing city skyline, his face a shade of gray usually reserved for corpses. "You need to call Henderson back," Sarah said, not looking up, her voice tight. "We'll settle. We'll take 50% of the house. We can drop the lawsuit threat if he just gives us the house. We can flip it fast." "He's not going to deal, Sarah," Greg snapped, his voice cracking. "Didn't you see his face? He enjoyed that. He's probably been waiting 5 years to drop that hammer on us." "Then we go to the press," Sarah turned to him, her eyes wide and manic. "We tell them she's being elder abused. We paint Elena alayhi salam a predator. I have contacts at the Daily Mail. I can get a story run by tomorrow morning. Caregiver steals millions from confused pensioner. We ruin Elena's life until she begs us to take the money back just to make it stop." Greg let out a dark, humorless laugh. "Confused? Sarah, Mom just remembered the exact date and time you went to a yacht party instead of calling her on her birthday. She's sharper than we are. If we go to the press, Henderson releases the call logs. We'll look like monsters." He pulled out his phone and opened his banking app. He stared at the screen for a long second, his breathing becoming shallow. The numbers were red, deep red. "I needed that liquidity," Greg whispered, his hand shaking slightly. Sarah stopped typing. She looked at her brother, really seeing his fear for the first time. "What do you mean? You make $400 an hour. You said you were building an empire. You're the VP of sales." Greg rubbed his face with his hands, dragging the skin down until he looked like a melting wax figure. "It's leverage, Sarah. It's all leverage. The condo in the city, adjustable rate mortgage, and the rates just hiked. The Porsche, leased. The Cabo trip, put on the Amex Platinum, which I haven't paid off in 3 months. I'm overextended." He looked at her, his eyes wild. "I have a balloon payment due on the investment property next week, 200 grand. If I don't pay it, I default."
I was banking on Mom's liquid assets to cover it. I already spent the inheritance in my head. Sarah stared at him in horror. You're broke?" "I'm cash flow negative," Greg corrected, using corporate speak to mask his failure. "I thought this was a done deal. I thought we walked in, signed some papers for the senile old lady, and I walked out with a check for $1 million. Without that check, the dominoes start falling. I could lose everything." "Oh my God," Sarah breathed, pulling away from him. "You idiot. You absolute idiot." "Don't call me an idiot," Greg shouted, making the Uber driver glance nervously in the rearview mirror. "You're no better. How much credit card debt are you hiding under those designer bags? Huh? I saw the final notice on your kitchen counter last Christmas when I dropped off your gift." "That was a mistake," Sarah shrieked defensively, her face flushing. "I handled that." "We are screwed." Greg leaned his head back against the seat, closing his eyes. "We are actually screwed." Sarah's face hardened. The desperation shifted into something colder, more calculated. She looked at her phone again. She opened the camera app. She switched to video mode. She checked her lighting in the rearview mirror, fluffing her hair to look slightly disheveled, slightly tragic. "No," Sarah said, her voice dropping to a whisper. "We're not screwed. Not if I control the narrative first." "What are you doing?" Greg asked, opening one eye. "I'm doing what I do best," Sarah said, hitting the red record button. Her face instantly transformed. The anger vanished, replaced by a teary, trembling lip
her voice cracking perfectly. "I wasn't going to post today. Honestly, I'm heartbroken. I just left my mom's house, and, well, I think she's being taken advantage of by a stranger living in her home. It's so hard to watch your parents get old and confused. I just need your prayers right now, and maybe some legal advice. Has anyone ever dealt with a caregiver isolating a parent and forcing them to change their will?" She wiped away a fake tear. "I just want to protect my mom. Please share this. We need help." She stopped recording. She watched it back. She smiled. "Post," she said, tapping the screen. "Let the internet do the work for us."
The mob will destroy Elena before the sun comes up. Greg looked at her with a mix of disgust and admiration. You really are a shark. Sink or swim, Greg, Sarah said, watching the likes start to roll in immediately. And I'm not sinking. But Sarah had forgotten one thing. The internet loves a victim, but it loves exposing a liar even more. And she had just invited millions of people, including the Justice Berry seeking Elena, to look very, very closely at the truth.
The comments on Sarah's video started pouring in within minutes. At first, it was exactly what she wanted. "OMG, Sarah, I'm so sorry. This happened to my grandma. Caregivers are snakes. Lawyer up, girl. Get that woman out of there. Praying for you and your family. #JusticeForMom." Sarah sat in the Uber, refreshing the feed every 3 seconds, a smug smile plastered on her face. "See?" she showed the screen to Greg. 3,000 views in 10 minutes. The court of public opinion is already ruling in our favor. By tomorrow, Elena will be radioactive. No hospital will hire her. She'll beg us to stop. Greg looked at the numbers, a sliver of hope returning to his eyes. Maybe this can work. If we put enough pressure on the facility where Elena works, if they think she's a liability. But the internet is a volatile beast. It feeds on engagement, but it thrives on receipts. 30 minutes later, the tide began to shift. It started with a single comment from a user named TruthSeeker99. "Wait, didn't you post a story an hour ago tagging yourself at Henderson & Associates law firm? That's not your mom's house. That's a high-end estate lawyer. Why were you at a lawyer's office if you were just visiting your sick mom?" Then another. "I follow your mom's neighbor on Facebook. She posted a pic of your mom and Elena getting ice cream literally 20 minutes ago. Your mom looks fine. She's laughing." Then the fatal blow. A user named Exposed by Data stitched Sarah's video. Sarah watched the stitched video in horror. It showed her tearful plea on one side, and on the other side, it showed screenshots of her own Instagram feed from the past 5 years. "This you?" the voiceover said. "May 14th, mom's birthday. You're on a yacht." Caption, "No drama, just vibes." "This you?" Thanksgiving, mom is alone. You're at a resort in Bali. "This you?" When your mom was in the hospital last year, you were live streaming a makeup tutorial and complaining that family drama is killing my vibe. The video ended with a brutal question. If you care about your mom so much, why do you only visit her when she's at a lawyer's office divesting her assets? Seems like you're crying over a check, not a parent. The comment section on Sarah's original video turned instantly. "You're crying with dry eyes, honey. Gold digger alert. Red flag. Leave Elena alone. She was there when you weren't. My mom died alone in a nursing home because my sister is like you."
You disgust me. The likes stopped. The dislikes and angry reacts skyrocketed. Her DMs began to fill not with sympathy, but with hate mail. "What is happening?" Sarah shrieked, her hands trembling so hard she almost dropped the phone. "They're turning on me! Why are they turning on me?" Greg grabbed her wrist, looking at the phone. "Delete it. Delete the video now." "I can't," Sarah panicked. "If I delete it, I look guilty. I have to double down. I have to explain." She started typing furiously in the comments. "You guys don't know the whole story. My mom has dementia. She doesn't know what she's doing." A reply came instantly from a verified account, a local news reporter who had evidently been following the thread. "At Sarah Reynolds, we just called the probate court. There is no record of a competency hearing filed for Martha Reynolds, but there is a record of a living trust established today donating $1.5 million to charity. Is that why you're upset? Because the money went to charity instead of you?" Greg went white. "They know about the money. How do they know about the money?" "Henderson!" Sarah screamed. "He must have leaked it, or someone in his office." "Or maybe," Greg said, his voice hollow,
People aren't as stupid as we think they are. The Uber driver, who had been silent the entire ride, suddenly cleared his throat. He looked in the rearview mirror, his eyes cold. "Excuse me," the driver said. "I'm going to have to end the ride here." "What?" Greg barked. "We're 10 blocks from the airport. You can't just dump us." "I can," the driver said, pulling over to the curb. He held up his phone. He had the Uber app open, but he also had TikTok playing in the corner of the screen, Sarah's video, and the stitch exposing her. "My mother is in a home," the driver said, his voice thick with emotion. "I visit her every single day after my shift. I send every spare dollar I have to her care." He turned around to face them. "Get out of my car." "This is unprofessional," Sarah screeched. "I'm going to report you. You'll lose your job." "Report me," the driver said, unlocking the doors with a loud thunk. "It's worth it. Get out." Greg looked at the driver, with the clenched jaw and the fists gripping the steering wheel. He realized this wasn't a debate he could win. "Come on, Sarah," Greg muttered, opening his door. "Let's go." "But my heels," Sarah whined.
I can't walk 10 blocks. Walk, Greg shouted, dragging her out onto the sidewalk. The black SUV sped off, leaving them standing on a dirty street corner in the middle of the city. Greg loosened his tie completely. Sarah stood there, clutching her phone. Elias's notifications pinged relentlessly, each one a tiny digital hammer, driving another nail into the coffin of her reputation. "My brand," Sarah whispered, staring at the screen as she lost 10,000 followers in real time. "My brand is ruined." Greg looked at her, then down at the pavement. "Forget your brand, Sarah. We just missed the check-in for the flight." He looked up at the sky. It was starting to rain. "And I don't think Mom is going to send an Uber to pick us up."
The rain wasn't a drizzle. It was a sudden, torrential downpour that seemed almost personal. Greg and Sarah huddled under the awning of a closed electronics store, shivering. Greg's expensive suit was soaked through the shoulders, smelling of wet wool. Sarah's mascara had finally given up, running down her cheeks in black rivulets that matched the streaks on the dirty window behind them. Inside the store window, a wall of televisions flickered. A news channel was on. The ticker at the bottom scrolled mundane headlines, but then a segment started. The headline, "Viral, the Ghost Children Phenomenon." Sarah froze. "Look," she whispered, pointing a shaking finger at the screen. On the TV, a news anchor was talking. "A video trending online today has sparked a nationwide conversation about elder neglect and entitlement. While we won't name the individuals to protect privacy," the screen flashed a blurred image. It was Sarah's video, blurred but unmistakably her. The incident highlights a growing trend of adult children ignoring their aging parents until inheritance becomes a factor. We spoke to a legal expert about the rise of living wills designed to prevent this. Cut to an interview with Mr. Henderson. Greg groaned, slamming his head back against the glass. Of course he's on the news. He probably planned this whole media blitz. Mr. Henderson, looking calm and authoritative on screen, spoke. "It is becoming common for clients to use competency tests of affection. If you don't know your mother's favorite flower, or her doctor's name, or why she was in the hospital, you may find yourself disinherited. It is not vengeance, it is a reallocation of resources to those who actually provided care." The segment cut back to the anchor. "We reached out to the daughter in the viral video for comment, but she has since deleted her account." Sarah gasped, checking her phone. "I didn't delete it. I got banned? Suspended for harassment and bullying?" She looked at Greg, horrified. "Instagram suspended me? That's my income. That's how I get clients." "Welcome to the real world," Greg muttered, wringing water out of his cuff, "where actions have consequences." "Don't lecture me," Sarah snapped. "You're the one who needs 200 grand by next week or you lose your rental properties. What are you going to do, Greg? Sell your watch?" Greg looked down at his wrist. The Rolex Submariner.
It was the only asset he technically owned outright. He had bought it with his first big commission check 5 years ago, the same month he told Mom he couldn't afford a plane ticket home for Christmas. "Maybe," Greg said quietly, "maybe I have to." Just then, his phone rang. It wasn't a creditor. It wasn't his boss. The caller ID said, "Mom." The siblings stared at the phone as if it were a bomb. It vibrated in Greg's wet hand. "She's calling us," Sarah whispered. "Maybe she changed her mind? Maybe she saw the rain? Maybe she feels bad?
Or maybe she wants to twist the knife, Greg said. He hesitated, his thumb hovering over the green button. The rain pounded on the awning like applause. Answer it, Sarah hissed. If there's even a 1% chance she's offering us a way out, answer it. Greg swiped right. He put the phone to his ear. Hello? He said, his voice cracking. Mom? There was a pause. The line was clear, no static. Hello, Greg, my voice came through. I sounded warm, dry, and comfortable. I saw at the weather report. It looks nasty out there. Yeah, Greg said, trying to keep his teeth from chattering. We had some car trouble. We're stuck downtown. I know, I said. Elena showed me the video of the Uber driver. It's quite popular. Greg closed his eyes. Mom, look, we're sorry, okay? We're really, really sorry. We messed up. We've been selfish. We've been awful. Just, please, can we come back? Can we just talk? Not about money, just talk? We can talk, I said, but not today. Today is for ice cream. Mom, please, Sarah leaned in, shouting into the phone. We're cold. We have nowhere to go. Our flight is gone. There is a Motel 6 on 4th Street, I said calmly. It's about 3 blocks from where you are. Rooms are $59 a night. A Motel 6? Greg scoffed, old habits dying hard. Mom, I don't stay in... Greg, I cut him off sharply. Do you have $59? Silence. I don't think so, Greg admitted, his voice barely audible. The shame was total. Then you have a problem, I said. But I have a solution. What? Greg asked, hope rising again. You'll transfer us money? No, I said. Open the envelope I gave you, the one with the phone card. The phone card? Greg looked at his pocket.
He pulled out the soggy envelope. Look inside, I said, behind the card. Greg ripped the envelope open. Behind the plastic AT&T card was a small folded piece of green paper. A $20 bill. Sarah has one too, I said. That's $40. It won't get you a room, but it will get you 2 bus tickets back to your apartments. The Greyhound station is around the corner. The bus? Sarah cried. A 6-hour bus ride? It's dry, I said, and it's paid for. Consider it my last act of financial support. Mom, Greg started to cry, actual tears this time. Why are you doing this? Because, I said softly, sometimes you have to hit rock bottom to realize the ground is the only thing that will catch you. I'm not catching you this time, Greg. I'm letting you land, so you can learn how to stand up on your own. We love you, Mom, Sarah sobbed into the speaker. We really do. There was a long silence on the other end. I know you do, honey, I said, and my voice sounded sad. I just wish you loved me enough to pick up the phone when I didn't have a checkbook in my hand. Goodbye, kids. Have a safe trip. Click. The line went dead. Greg lowered the phone. He looked at Sarah. He looked at the $20 bill in his hand. It was wet, limp, and small. But it was enough to get home. The bus station, Greg said, buttoning his soaked jacket. It's this way. They walked out from under the awning, into the rain, heading toward the Greyhound station, leaving the glow of the television screens behind them. On the screen, the news moved on to the weather. The sun was shining in the suburbs, right over 42 Maple Drive.
The Greyhound bus smelled of diesel fumes and stale disinfectant. It was a far cry from the first-class cabin Greg was supposed to be in, sipping champagne on his way to Cabo. Instead, he was wedged into seat 4B, his knees pressing against the seat in front of him. Sarah was next to him in the aisle seat, her head resting against the window, staring blankly at the rain-streaked darkness speeding by. The bus rattled over a pothole, jarring Greg's spine. He winced, adjusting his position. His wetsuit had dried into a stiff, wrinkled mess that clung uncomfortably to his skin. He pulled out his phone. 12% battery left. He opened his work email. Subject: Q3 sales targets, urgent. Greg, haven't heard from you today. We need those numbers for the board meeting tomorrow morning. Also, HR flagged your corporate card for a declined transaction at the airport lounge. Call me. Greg closed his eyes.
The house of cards wasn't just wobbling, it was collapsing. He had no numbers. He had missed the client calls he was supposed to make from the airport, and now his boss knew about the credit card. He looked over at Sarah. She had her phone plugged into a portable charger she'd found at the bottom of her bag, her only lifeline. She wasn't on Instagram. She was on Zillow. "What are you doing?" Greg asked, his voice rough. "Looking at apartments," Sarah whispered. "Cheaper ones. Studio apartments. In Queens." "You're moving?" "I have to," she said, scrolling past a listing for a basement unit with no windows. "I lost 3 brand deals in the last 4 hours. Morality clause violations," they said. "My agency dropped me via email 10 minutes ago. I can't afford my loft anymore." She looked at him, her eyes red-rimmed but strangely clear. The hysteria was gone, replaced by a cold, hard dose of reality. "We really messed up, Greg," she said. "We didn't just lose the money. We lost everything." "We can rebuild," Greg said, though he didn't sound convinced. "We're smart. We have skills." "Do we?" Sarah asked. "Or were we just lucky and entitled?" She turned the screen off and looked at him. Mom was right about the phone calls. I looked at my log. I haven't called her just to talk in 6 years, not since Dad died. Greg looked away, staring at the back of the seat in front of him. "I thought I was too important," he admitted. "I thought, I don't know, that she would always be there, like a piece of furniture."
You don't call your couch to see how it's doing. That's horrible, Sarah said. I know, Greg whispered. I know. The bus slowed down, pulling into a rest stop. The driver's voice crackled over the intercom. 10-minute break. Grab snacks if you want 'em. I'm starving, Sarah said, her stomach growling audibly. We haven't eaten since breakfast. Greg checked his pocket. He had the wet $20 bill Mom had given him. He had used it to buy the tickets, but there was $4.50 in change left. Come on, Greg said, standing up. I'll buy you a vending machine dinner. They shuffled off the bus and into the harsh fluorescent light of the rest stop building. It was empty except for a janitor mopping the floor. They stood in front of the vending machine, staring at the rows of chips and candy bars, like it was a gourmet menu. Chinos or Snickers? Greg asked, inserting the crinkled dollar bills. Snickers, Sarah said. It has peanuts, protein. Greg punched the code. The coil turned. The bar fell. He retrieved it and broke it in half. He handed one half to Sarah. They stood there in the empty rest stop, eating a shared candy bar in silence. Two people who, hours ago, thought they were inheriting millions. It's good, Sarah said, chewing slowly. Yeah, Greg nodded. It is. He looked at his sister. Her hair was frizzy, her makeup was gone, and she was wearing a wrinkled designer dress that looked ridiculous in this setting. But for the first time in years, she looked like his sister. Not an influencer, not a rival, just Sarah. Remember when we were kids? Greg asked. When Dad lost his jaw to the clant, and we had to eat Spam and eggs for a month? Yeah, Sarah smiled faintly. Mom made it a game. She called it Spam Surprise. She pretended we were astronauts eating space food. She did, Greg chuckled softly. She always tried to make it okay, even when she was terrified. We forgot that, Sarah said. We forgot how hard she tried. Greg swallowed the last bite of chocolate. I'm gonna sell the Rolex, he said suddenly. Sarah looked at his wrist. Really? You love that watch. I do, Greg said. But I need the money. Not for the balloon payment. I'm going to let the investment property foreclose. I can't save it. Then why sell the watch? To pay back Mom, Greg said. For the roof, the leak Alina fixed. I'm going to send her a check. Not because she needs it, but because I owe it. Sarah looked at him, surprised.
Then she nodded. I'll sell my bags, she said. The Birkin, the Pradas. I can probably get 10 grand. I'll send it to the Greg and Sarah Foundation. The charity? Greg raised an eyebrow. Yeah, Sarah said. If our names are on it, maybe we should actually contribute to it. For real this time. Attention passengers, the intercom blared. Bus leaving in 2 minutes. They walked back to the bus. They were still broke, they were still in trouble, but as they sat back down in the cramped seats, the weight on Greg's chest felt a little lighter. He took out the phone card Mom had given him, the snapped plastic pieces he had shoved in his pocket earlier. He fit them together like a puzzle. The number on the back was still legible.
He didn't call, not yet. He didn't deserve to yet. But he put the pieces carefully into his wallet, right next to his driver's license. One day, he whispered to himself, one day I'll make the call. The bus engine roared to life, carrying them back to the city, back to the mess they had made, and hopefully toward the people they needed to become. The neon sign of Fast Cash Pawn and Gold buzzed loudly, a sound like an angry hornet in the quiet Ohio street. Greg stood outside, looking at the display window filled with power tools, musical instruments, and engagement rings from failed marriages. He looked down at his wrist, the Rolex Submariner. It was heavy, cool against his skin. It was the only thing he had left that said, I am somebody. He took a deep breath, unclasped the watch, and walked inside. The man behind the counter didn't look up from his magazine. We close in 10 minutes. I have a watch, Greg said, placing the timepiece on the scratched glass counter. Rolex, 2019 model. Box and papers are, well, the papers are in New York, but it's authentic. The pawnbroker put down his magazine. He picked up the watch, screwed a loop into his eye socket, and examined it. He hummed. I'll give you $4,000, the man grunted. 4? Greg felt a surge of his old indignation rising. This retails for $11,000. The secondary market is hot right now. It's worth at least 9. The man dropped the watch onto the counter with a dull clatter. You're in Akron, pal, not Manhattan, and you look like you need the money today. $4,000, take it or leave it. Greg looked at the watch. He thought about the balloon payment on his investment property that he had already missed. He thought about the eviction notice on his condo door. Then he thought about his mother sitting on the floor with a broken leg, waiting for a call that never came. Take it, Greg whispered. The man counted out 40 $100 bills. It was a thick stack, but it felt incredibly light. Greg took the money. He didn't put it in his wallet. He put it in an envelope he had already addressed to Martha Reynolds. He kept $500 for a deposit on a studio apartment and food. The rest, the bulk of his pride, was going in the mail. Meanwhile, in Queens, Sarah walked into Second Chance Luxury Consignment. She was dragging 2 large suitcases. The sales clerk, a woman with sharp glasses and a sharper attitude, looked at the bags. We're not buying fast fashion, honey. Sarah hoisted the first suitcase onto the counter and unzipped it. Inside was a rainbow of leather. Hermes, Prada, Gucci, Balenciaga. Her entire collection. Her identity. It's not fast fashion, Sarah said, her voice trembling slightly. It's my life savings. The clerk's eyes widened. She began pulling out the bags, checking the stitching, sniffing the leather. Why are you selling all of this? The clerk asked, looking at Sarah suspiciously. Stolen? No, Sarah said. I'm paying a debt. I can give you $12,000 for the lot, the clerk said. Store credit is $15,000. Cash, Sarah said immediately. I need a check, today. $12,000 is a steal for me, the clerk warned her. You could get double on eBay if you waited a month. I don't have a month, Sarah said. I have rent due on a basement apartment, and I need to buy non-slip shoes for a bakery job. The clerk paused, looking at Sarah's manicured hands, then at her tired eyes. She saw the desperation, but she also saw determination. Fine, the clerk said. I'll write the check. Later that night, Greg sat on a mattress on the floor of his new apartment. It was a single room above a garage. The walls were thin. He could hear his neighbor watching a game show. He had his phone in his hand. He dialed Sarah. Hello? Sarah answered. She sounded exhausted. Background noise suggested she was on the subway. I did it, Greg said, staring at the blank wall. I sold the watch. I sold the bags, Sarah replied. I felt naked walking out of there. I literally carried my stuff home in a garbage bag. How much did you keep? She said. Enough for first and last month's rent. And the rest, I sent it to the foundation. The foundation? Greg asked. Why? Because, Sarah's voice broke, it has our names on it. If I'm going to be a broke baker, I at least want my name to mean something good for once. Greg smiled. It was a small, sad smile. I sent Mom a check for the roof. Do you think she'll call us? Sarah asked. No, Greg said firmly. And we're not going to call her either. Why not? Because we're not ready, Greg said, standing up and walking to the small, dirty window. He looked out at the streetlights reflecting on the wet pavement. We can't call her just because we did one good thing. We have to call her when we've changed. When we don't need her to tell us good job. We have to do the work first. The grind, Sarah whispered. The real grind, Greg corrected. Tomorrow I start at the hardware store. Entry level. Stocking shelves. Tomorrow, I start at the bakery, 4 a.m. shift. Good luck, Sarah.
And for the first time in his life, he meant it without jealousy. Good luck, Greg, she replied. They hung up. Greg looked at the empty room. He had no furniture, no Rolex, and no status. But as he lay down on the mattress and pulled a thin blanket over himself, he realized something strange. For the first time in 5 years, he wasn't worried about checking his email. He wasn't worried about the stock market. He wasn't checking his likes. He closed his eyes, and for the first time in 5 years, he slept through the night. 6 months later. The garden at 42 Maple Drive was in full bloom. Hydrangeas, bursts of blue and purple, lined the walkway. A new wooden ramp had been installed alongside the porch steps, tasteful and sturdy, painted a crisp white to match the trim. I sat on the porch swing, a blanket over my legs, watching Elena water the rose bushes. She was humming a song, something upbeat in Spanish. She looked happy. She had finished her nursing degree last month, paid for by the Elena Santos Care Fund, and had just started her dream job at the city hospital. The postman, a friendly young man named Dave, walked up the driveway. "Afternoon, Mrs. Reynolds," he called out. "Beautiful day for it." "It certainly is, Dave," I smiled. "Anything good today, or just bills?" "Well," Dave sorted through the stack. "Water bill, electric, oh, and 2 letters, handwritten. No return address on this one, but the postmark is in Queens." He handed me the mail. Elena turned off the hose and walked over, wiping her hands on her jeans. "From Queens?" she asked, raising an eyebrow. "Is it her?" "I think so," I said. I looked at the other envelope. It was postmarked from a smaller town in Ohio. "And this one is from Greg." "Ohio?" Elena sat down next to me on the swing. "I thought he was in the city?" "Open it," I said, handing her Greg's letter. "My eyes are a bit tired today." Elena carefully tore open the envelope. She pulled out a single sheet of lined notebook paper and a check. "It's a check for $3,000, Elena said, surprised. "Payable to Martha Reynolds." "Read the letter," I urged. Elena cleared her throat. "Dear Mom, I know I'm not supposed to call until I'm ready, and I'm not ready yet. I'm still fixing things, but I wanted you to have this. It's the first installment for the roof repair you paid for years ago. I sold the watch, I sold the car. I moved to Ohio, the cost of living is lower, and I got a job as a regional sales manager for a hardware supply company. It's not VP, and the suit is polyester, but the people are decent, and I actually know my neighbors' names here. I volunteer at the foundation on weekends. I drive to van for the seniors. Last week, I met a guy named Earl. He reminds me of Dad. He told me I'm a good driver. That felt better than closing $1 million deal ever did. I hope you're well. I hope Alina is well. Tell her I'm sorry. I really am. Love, Greg. P.S. I tried Spam Surprise last night. It's not alai salam good, I remembered, but it did the trick. I felt a tear prick the corner of my eye. I wiped it away quickly. "Ohio," I chuckled. He always hated the Midwest. "He sounds different," Alina said softly. "Humbled." "He sounds like my son again," I said. "Now, what about Sarah?" I opened Sarah's letter myself. It was written on plain printer paper, not the heavy, scented stationery she used to use. "Hi, Mom. I'm writing this from the library because I canceled my internet at the apartment. Queens is loud, but it's real. I got a job, a real job. I'm an assistant manager at a bakery. I wake up at 4 a.m. to knead dough. My manicure is ruined and I smell like yeast all the time. But I kind of like it. Making something with your hands feels good. It's honest. I haven't posted on social media in 6 months. Nobody knows where I am and nobody cares. It was scary at first, being invisible. But now, it's kind of peaceful. I sent a donation to the foundation last week. It wasn't much, just tips from the jar, but it was mine. I didn't do it for a tax write-off. I did it because I salala lehi wa salam, an old lady come into the bakery alone, counting coins for a muffin. I bought it for her. I thought of you. I miss you. I'm saving up for a bus ticket, not to ask for money, just to bring you some sourdough. It's really good. Love, Sarah. I folded the letter and pressed it to my chest. The silence on the porch was comfortable, filled only with the chirping of birds and the distant hum of a lawnmower. "They're learning," Alina said, squeezing my shoulder. "You were right. The fall didn't kill them." "No," I smiled, looking out at the hydrangeas. "It woke them up."
I looked at the check from Greg. $3,000. Alina, I said, take this check. Martha, no, she protested immediately. That's your money. He paid you back. Take it, I insisted. Put it in the fun. We're going on a trip. A trip? Alina laughed. Where to? Florida? I looked at the postmark on Greg's letter again. Ohio. Then at Sarah's. Queens. No, I said, a mischievous twinkle in my eye. I was thinking a road trip. I hear the sourdough in Queens is excellent this time of year. And then, maybe we swing by Ohio. I need some hardware supplies. Alina stared at me, then a wide grin spread across her face. You want to visit them? They can't afford to come to me, I said, standing up and grabbing my cane.
And frankly, I'm tired of waiting by the phone. If the mountain won't come to Mohammed goes to the bakery, Elena finished, laughing. Exactly, I said. Pack your bags, Elena. We leave in the morning. And bring the Spam. I have a feeling we might need it. We walked inside together, the screen door slamming shut behind us, a sound that used to echo in an empty house, but now sounded like the start of an adventure. The phone on the wall remained silent, but it didn't matter anymore. The connection had been restored, not by wires, but by hard lessons and harder truths. The family was broken, yes, but for the first time in a long time, it was healing right. The rented minivan, a sensible silver Toyota Sienna, rolled into the quiet street in Queens. It was a far cry from the luxury SUVs my children used to covet, but it had good suspension and plenty of room for my cane and our luggage. Elena was driving, navigating the tight urban parking with impressive skill. That's the address, Elena said, pointing to a modest brick building with a faded awning that read Joe's Bakery and Cafe. Are you sure you want to just show up? I'm 65 years old and I own the mortgage on their souls, I joked, checking my lipstick in the visor mirror. I can show up wherever I please. We parked. My heart hammered in my chest, a rhythm of anxiety and excitement I hadn't felt in years. I adjusted my scarf. Let's go, I said. The bell above the bakery door jingled as we entered. The smell of fresh bread and cinnamon hit us instantly, warm, comforting, and real. The shop was busy. A line of customers waited by the counter. Behind the glass case, wearing a flour-dusted apron and a hairnet that completely hid her once perfect balayage, was Sarah. She was moving fast, bagging bagels, pouring coffee, smiling at customers. Not the fake, camera-ready smile she used to wear for selfies. A real, tired, genuine smile. Here's your change, Mr. Wisso, she said to an elderly man. Careful on the step, it's slippery. Thanks, kid, the man grunted. She wiped her hands on her apron and looked up. Next, how can I help you? She froze. The tongs in her hand clattered onto the counter. The bakery noise seemed to fade away. Sarah stared at me, then at Elena, then back at me. Her eyes widened, filling with sudden tears. She looked terrified, as if she thought we were hallucinations brought on by exhaustion. Mom? She whispered. The customers in line turned to look. Hello, Sarah, I said, stepping forward. I heard the sourdough is good. Sarah didn't speak. She didn't check her reflection. She didn't look for a camera. She vaulted over the counter, bypassing the swing gate entirely, and ran to me. She crashed into me, hugging me so hard I nearly lost my balance. She smelled of yeast and sweat and vanilla. It was the best smell in the world. Mom, she sobbed into my shoulder, not caring that she was getting flour all over my coat. Mom, you came. You actually came. Of course I came, I said, stroking her hair.
You didn't think I'd let you bake alone forever, did you? She pulled back, her face streaked with tears and flour. She looked at Elena. Elena? Hi. Hi, Sarah. Elena smiled warmly. Nice apron. Sarah laughed, a wet, choked sound. It's awful. I love it. Her boss, then at us. Come on, she said, grabbing my hand. There's a table in the back. I'll get you coffee. The best coffee. And a croissant. It's on the house. Well, on my paycheck. We sat at a small, wobbly table. Sarah bustled around, bringing us pastries and mugs. She sat down, her hands shaking slightly. I'm sorry, she said again, looking at her chipped nails. About everything. I was so empty. I didn't know how empty I was until everything was gone. You're not empty now, I said, reaching across the table to cover her hand. You're full. I can see it in your eyes. I'm working on it, she said. I'm saving up. I want to go back to school. Maybe marketing again, but for real things. Nonprofits or bakeries. That sounds wonderful, I said. And Greg? Sarah asked. Have you heard from him? Better than that, Elena chimed in, pulling a map out of her purse. We're heading there next, Ohio. Sarah's eyes lit up. Can I come? She looked at the kitchen, then back at us. I mean, I can't just leave, but... Actually, I said, I spoke to your boss, Joe, on the phone yesterday. Told him I was coming to kidnap his best employee for a few days. Sarah gasped at me. You planned this? I'm a mother, Sarah, I winked. I plan everything. You have 4 days off. Sarah looked at me, stunned. Then a slow, radiant smile spread across her face. Ohio, she said. Road trip. Road trip, I confirmed. 10 minutes later, Sarah was in the backseat of the minivan, still smelling like a bakery, humming along to the radio. We hit the highway, heading west. The city skyline faded behind us. Next stop, Elena announced from the driver's seat, Greg's Hardware Emporium. I closed my eyes, listening to the hum of the tires. My family was in a minivan. Not a yacht, not a private jet, a minivan. And for the first time in a decade, we were all heading in the same direction.
The hardware store in Ohio was unassuming, a large metal warehouse with rows of lumber stacked outside. We pulled into the parking lot just as the sun was beginning to set, casting long, golden shadows across the asphalt. Sarah was practically vibrating in the back seat. Do you think he'll be surprised? What if he's with a customer? What if he's wearing the polyester suit? Relax, Elena laughed, putting the van in park. He's your brother, not a celebrity. We walked in. The smell of sawdust and oil was thick in the air. We scanned the aisles. Can I help you folks find anything? A voice called out from aisle 4. Greg walked out. He was wearing a red polo shirt with Greg stitched on the pocket, khakis, and comfortable work boots. He looked solid. He had gained a little weight, but it looked healthy, not like the bloated puffiness of expensive alcohol. His hair was shorter, simpler. He stopped dead when he saw us. The box of screws he was holding slipped from his hands and hit the floor with a loud crash. Screws scattered everywhere. Mom? He stammered. Sarah? Sarah didn't wait. She ran down the aisle and tackled him. Greg! She squealed. Greg caught her, stumbling back, laughing in disbelief. He hugged her tight, lifting her off her feet. Sarah, what is happening? He looked up at me, walking slowly down the aisle with Elena. His eyes filled with tears instantly. He let go of Sarah and walked toward me. He hesitated, as if he wasn't sure he was allowed to touch me. I didn't hesitate. I opened my arms. Come here, son, I said. Greg collapsed into my hug. He buried his face in my neck, sobbing. He was a grown man, taller than me, broader than me, but in that moment, he was my little boy again. I'm sorry, he wept. I'm so sorry, Mom. I know, I whispered, patting his back. I know, you found your way home. He pulled back, wiping his eyes with the back of his hand. He looked at Elena. Hi, Elena, he said, his voice thick. He extended a hand, then pulled it back and hugged her too. Thank you for taking care of her, for driving the van. Elena hugged him back, smiling. You're welcome, Greg. Nice polo. Greg laughed, looking down at his shirt. Yeah, well, it breathes. We're kidnapping you, Sarah announced, bouncing on her heels. Mom has the van, we're going to dinner, and then we're staying at a motel.
And we're eating Spam Surprise. Greg looked at me, bewildered. Spam Surprise? I brought the cans, I said, tapping my oversized purse, and a hot plate. Greg looked at us, his mother, his sister, and the woman who had become his sister. He looked around the hardware store, then back at us. A peace settled over his face that I had never seen before. The frantic ambition was gone. The hunger for validation was gone. Let me just tell my manager I'm taking my break, Greg said. My long break. The room was cramped, with 2 double beds and floral wallpaper that had been out of style since 1990. We were all sitting on the floor in a circle. The hot plate was sizzling in the corner. We were eating Spam and eggs off paper plates. We were drinking cheap soda. And we were laughing. Greg was telling a story about a customer who tried to return a ladder because it was too tall. Sarah was reenacting a customer trying to order a gluten-free, dairy-free, fun-free croissant. Elena was teaching them Spanish swear words to use on difficult clients. I sat back against the bed, watching them. My phone buzzed on the nightstand. I picked it up. It was a notification from the bank, the automatic deposit for my pension. I looked at the screen, then at my kids. You know, I said, the room going quiet, I still have that house, 42 Maple Drive. Greg stopped chewing. Sarah looked up.
It's a big house, I continued. Too big for just me and Elena. Mom, Greg said softly, we don't want the house. We don't want anything. I know, I said. That's why I'm offering it. I looked at them. Elena is moving in with her fiancé next month. She didn't tell you, but she is. Elena blushed. He's a doctor. You'll like him. So, I said, the house will be empty. And I was thinking, the basement apartment is empty too. And the garage could be converted into a workshop. Greg and Sarah looked at each other. Are you saying, Sarah started. I am saying, I smiled, if you ever want to come back, not to take, but to live, to visit, the door is unlocked. Greg looked at his paper plate. Then he looked at me. Maybe for Christmas, he said, I can get time off. I can bake the bread, Sarah said. And I'll make the turkey, Elena added. And I said, raising my can of soda, will sit in my chair and watch you all do the work. We all laughed, clinking our soda cans together.